Hello everybody, this is Darren here, and today I will be making beer. The natural process of fermentation involves taking sugars and converting them into alcohol. In the case of beer, we're going to get our sugars from grain. This is malted barley. Malted barley does not actually contain sugar, but it contains starches that can be converted to sugar through the process of mashing. The mashing process will be performed in a mash tun like this. The grain will be mixed with hot water to reach an optimal temperature of 152 degrees. The beer recipe I will be using today uses 12 pounds of grain. Using an online calculator, I have determined that I will need to mix 3.75 gallons of water that is 166.72 degrees with my grain to reach the target mash temperature of 152 degrees. And now I will add my grain to the mash tun. We're going to let the mash sit for about 60 minutes while the starches are converted into sugars. I like to stir about every 20 minutes just to make sure there's no dry chunks and to get a real thorough conversion. An hour has passed since I started the mashing process. The first thing I'm going to do now is start heating up my sparge water. The sparge water should be about 170 degrees. This water is going to be used to rinse out all this grain and get as much of the sugars and grainy goodness out of the grain as I possibly can. The first thing I'll do when I begin draining my mash tun is a step called the Vorloff. The Vorloff is designed to get any big chunks of drain that might come out of the spout. Inside of this mash tun, there's a braided stainless steel tube to try and filter out the really big pieces of grain. What's going on right now as this drains is that grain is settling onto itself, and it's actually creating a filter out of itself. We call that the grain bed. I'll usually fill up at least one pitcher. If it still looks really cloudy, I'll fill a second one. I'll just pour this right back into the mash tun. It's starting to run pretty clear, so I'm going to start to collect the first running in my container there. Additionally, I like to take specific gravity readings of all my runnings and use these notes to make future recipes. Here we go, our sparge water is 170 degrees, just a little over, but it'll cool off as we pour it. And our mash tun is finished draining. And this is our first run out of the mash tun, but there's still plenty of sugars to be taken from those grains. So now we're going to pour the sparge water into the cooler. I like to again stir it very thoroughly. Alright, we let our sparge water sit for about 5 minutes here, and I'm just going to go ahead and stir one more time. Try not to spill too much. We're going to Vorloff again to set the grain bed. Well, it looks like that's about it for our sparge. I'm just gonna go ahead and pour the last of this into the brew kettle and we can start the boil. Now that all the wort is in the brew pot, we're gonna get it boiling, and then we'll start adding hops. There's a lot of use for the spent brewing grains. The chickens love it. Our beer is now close to the boiling point. It's time to start thinking about our hops additions. We add hops to beer for different reasons. The primary reason for hops is to bitter the beer to balance out some of the residual sweetness that'll be left after fermentation. This is the hops that we'll put in first. It's called the bittering hops. For this particular beer, I chose Chinook. It has a high percentage of alpha acids, which are produced the bitterness in the beer. Towards the end of the boil, or actually at the very end of the boil on this particular beer, I'm going to add an ounce of Cascade hops. These are going to be aroma hops, and they're going to help have it that flowery, fresh, floral smell as you'd expect from a spring ale like I'm boiling today. Additionally, in this particular beer, I'm going to add a dry hop, and I chose Amarillo for this because it also has a very good, strong floral nose so that you can smell as the beer approaches. On a dry hop, this isn't even going to be added to the beer while it's boiled. I will add this after the beer has been fermented. When the beer first starts to boil, it's really easy to boil over. And I think it's about time to add our hops. And in go our bittering hops. I like to use the hops pellets in the brew because you don't have to strain them out when you're done. For the dry hop, I chose a whole leafy hop. I have about 15 minutes remaining before the boil is completed, and there's a couple of things I need to do. I need to install my wort chiller, which is just a copper coil that I'm going to run cold water through in order to cool down the wort after it's done boiling. It's very important to chill your wort quickly to avoid it reacting with oxygen from the air, as well as overutilizing the hops that you use at the very end of the boil. By adding it 15 minutes ahead of time, it'll sanitize any germs that may be on the chiller. Additionally, at this time, I will add a half a teaspoon of Irish moss, which will help clarify the beer. Our beer has now been boiling for 1 hour since we added our original bittering hops. We did not do a flavor hop addition on this beer, but now that it is the very end of the boil, I am going to add an ounce of Cascade hops just to help with the hops aroma. And I like to do that right as I shut the flame off. By not boiling these hops, you'll get a lot more of the flowery hops smell out of them, and you'll achieve almost no bitterness whatsoever. Now I'm going to go turn on the water for my wort chiller, and we'll begin the chilling process of this beer. We've reduced the temperature of our wort down to 90 degrees, and now it's time to put the wort in the primary. Once you're done transferring all of your work to the primary fermenter, make sure you write down your starting gravity for your beer, and then you can add your yeast. For this beer, I'm just using a dry yeast. Because it has a fairly low starting gravity, I don't feel the need to make a starter on this particular beer. Once finished, secure your sanitized lid and airlock and put it away in a cool, dark place. And don't ever forget, after a hard day of brewing, to stop and have a home brew. Cheers.